What's up, gang? Welcome to The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now listen, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius, and I'm flying solo, and I'm going to let everyone in on one of my best kept secrets, and it is, how do you leverage podcast to land your dream clients? How do you use it to leverage for your network? And I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but where did the podcast come from? Where did the Greatness Machine come from? And what did I learn from it that I've now been helping a few different entrepreneurs, friends of mine. And if you're interested in this, you're welcome to hit me up, and happy to talk to you about it too. But it's, how do you leverage a podcast to meet your dream, network, to build your dream network, to land your big clients, and to do it in a way that's not obvious. Because I think a lot of people, when they want to build a podcast, they want to build it to build a huge audience. And I think that's actually, although I've done it. And so this is coming from somebody that's spent a lot of time over the last, 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in May when we launched the podcast, June of 2020 when the podcast started. And it was a live stream. And the reason I actually launched The Greatness Machine was I launched it to be a podcast, essentially. Really, it was a live stream that turned into a podcast in March of 2021, but I launched it as a mechanism, as part of a book launch. So I started my book. I wrote my book, The Core Value Equation. I hired Amber Vilhauer and her team. And one of the parts of their strategy was, hey, you need to start a live stream and you need to invite people who you want to help you launch your book, basically support your book launch. You invite them to your live stream. At the end of the show, you get to know them. You spend an hour getting to know them. And at the end of the show, you ask them, if there's anything you can do to help them. So you always make an offer, and you offer to see if there's any introductions you can make for them, any way you can help them in their business or the projects they're working on. And after that, it's a simple ask, like say, hey, let them know what you're working on and see if they're willing to help you with what you're working on. And at the time, what I was working on was my book launch for The Core Value Equation. And it was amazing. Over like a 10 or 11 week period, I interviewed 83 people. This is June, July, August, part of September of 2020. Sometimes I was interviewing like 14 people a week. It was quite the project, and I went all in on it. And I was amazed. I was astounded. I met some really interesting people like Chip Conley, who I didn't know before that, but he was friends with former guest of mine, Tony. And Tony Lilios, and there was a bunch of other folks in there that like really cool people who I didn't know, and then they were all very supportive of my book launch, and I made a mental note to myself. I said, if whatever my next business I start, if I'm going to be wanting to land clients, or if I'm going to want to be able to meet people that I otherwise wouldn't know, I'm going to leverage the podcast as a way to meet people and to put content out. So to use it as a content creator, but really it was for me to meet people I otherwise couldn't meet. And I want to, so I made that note to myself, and we've since successfully done that. We've done that with our podcast for the What Matters podcast, which we use for our business at Rise Growth. We interview top RIAs. My brother and Ashley Ward do that. And I launched a show for them, and it's been just phenomenal. We've met a ton of great people, which has led to us, one way or the other doing deals, and it was a really good case study. So fast forward to recently, I started opening this up to some of my friends. We've launched a couple shows now for friends. The Entrepreneurial CEO podcast is one of them. The Seat at the Table podcast is one of them. And I'm bringing this up because, I want you to start thinking about podcasts as a different medium, but thinking of it as I'm like repeating myself, thinking of it as a medium to open doors and build relationships that you otherwise wouldn't build. And when the minute you think a podcast that way, and quit thinking about it as a mechanism to build this massive following, like you're going to become the next Joe Rogan or Who's Your Daddy or whatever those big podcasts that are out there, which you can do that too. We built this show up to, we have a 250,000 subscribers, and the show just hit over 3 million downloads, 3.1 million downloads this week. Probably actually close to 3.2 million, 3.1 million just on Castbox. And if you say, well, Darius, how the hell you do that? It was really simple. I interviewed Jordan Harbinger of the Jordan Harbinger Show, who's had tens of millions of downloads, one of the top business and learning podcasts in the world. And I asked him a question on the show. So anyone that, if you can go listen to that show, it's a show that we recorded, 5 years ago. And he said, it's real simple. You pay money. If you want to build a big audience and a big following, you got to spend money. You got to do media buys. You got to go buy subscribers. Essentially, you got to advertise a show. You got to treat it like a product. And it took me some time. We ended up getting hooked up with the Young and Profiting Network, and we built the show. But a big portion, most of the audience, is because we spent a ton of money on media buys. I mean, tons. And we continuously have to do that, and that's how we build the show. And it's great. We have a big following, and we have a lot of listeners, and we get a lot of downloads. And because of that, over time, over 5 years, I've built up quite the roster of guests. And it just it's a snowball. It gets bigger every year. We get better guests, or more people with larger influence, and people that would otherwise say no. We get some famous people from time to time. And, and now we have enough of a following, and we have enough downloads where we can get advertisers, and the show's a thing. And I'm going to tell you this, if you want to start a podcast, that you probably shouldn't do it for those reasons. Like, those are not good reasons. Like, from an ROI perspective, as far as like, what has it generated from a business perspective or advertising dollars, this is not a very good use of my time, that's for sure. But from the perspective of the value I've gotten from the people I've met, it is one of the best things I've ever done. By far. Like, I have met so many amazing people, the social capital, just as far as like getting to people, spend time with them, hang out with them. I mean, we have a bunch of shows coming up right now that you're going to see these guests, and you're going to be like, oh man, like, to get an hour with a person like that, you can go pay them for a keynote, I guess. Or you could build an asset like the Greatness Machine, and you get to meet these amazing people. Now, I don't meet them for any other reason except just to like meet someone cool and get to know them better. And I think that I've made a pretty large investment to get to do that. And what I would encourage you is to not do that. I don't there's no reason to go meet famous people and to make the investment I've made. I've gotten here. It's because I have a passion for doing podcasts. I've gotten here because I love this medium. It's an artistic medium for me. It's a way for me to express my voice. It's a way for me to meet really amazing people like Will Guidara that wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. I love Will. Will, if you're listening, you're the man. We're getting to meet someone like Guy Kawasaki and spend an hour with him, and him just dropping knowledge. I interviewed Robert Edward Grant 2 days ago. This guy's just a stud. You guys will hear his show coming out soon. The list is huge at this point. Famous people like Moby and Seth Godin, and I can go down the list. And some people that are less renowned, but they're just amazing people. And for me, that's a reason. That's where I'm at with the show, and I'll continue to pour into the show inevitably. I don't think I'll ever stop doing the show. And we'll see what comes of it. But that is not a reason to start a podcast in my mind. I would tell you, like, if you want to make a big upfront investment in advertising dollars, like a real big one, I'm talking like probably a 6-figure investment minimum, and a ton of your time and a ton of energy, then you can end up getting some version of what I have, maybe, if you don't screw it up. That's not a reason to do the show. And I find a lot of people are trying to build these shows because they want to build an audience, and they hope to make that audience buy stuff from them. And my perspective is that might work for some people, but I have a totally different perspective of why you should start a podcast. I think the reason to start a podcast is because you want to meet people, and they could be a potential client, they could be a potential, team member, or they could be a potential person of influence that you want in your life or in your business. And the person on the other side of the interview is who you should be catering to. That is the whole reason to do the show. And the audience, whoever the hell they are, great. That's gravy. Someone in the audience ends up being a client of yours, or, does business with you. Great. Good for you. That's a referral that you didn't earn in my mind. But if you start thinking of, hey, the whole sole reason I'm doing a podcast is because I want my perfect client on the other side of that video, right? And let's say you're using a Riverside.fm, which is what we use. And let's say the other person on the other side of the camera is my perfect client, or a person I want that is my industry that I want to build a relationship, or the perfect recruit, depending on the reason why you're doing it. Let's say you're in a business that the more salespeople you can recruit of a certain lineage, the bigger your business gets. Hell, and that's your top line growth number. That's how I grow the top line of my business. I would tell you should start a podcast on recruiting that person. And let's say I'm in a business where I got to recruit, top level salespeople from all over the industry to come work for me. I would do a podcast which specializes on featuring the top salespeople in my given industry. Let's say your given industry is, B2B lending. And I'm picking one that I used to be in. And the only way I can grow my business in B2B lending is by recruiting top level salespeople that specialize in B2B lending. I would start a podcast where we featured top salespeople in B2B lending and the secrets of their success. And I'd go out there and I would hit up every single person in my industry and interview every single one of them, build relationships with them, and recruit them to come work for me because of me turning a stranger into a friend over my podcast. That's a perfect example of something I would consider doing and why a great use of a podcast. Why? Because I can tell you, if I interview 100 people, I probably end up getting 30%, depending on how charismatic and likable and how good of a host you are and how much time you spend connecting with them. I'm going to probably turn 20 or 30% of them into some sort of active form of a sale, of them maybe doing something with me, or they know somebody that's looking for an opportunity and I just made a good first impression on them. So that's a perfect example. Another example would be that you want to, let's say you have a management consulting business and you want to go and your perfect client is a B2B entrepreneur. But you might want to start a podcast where you are interviewing entrepreneurs and trying to figure out whatever pain points they have through that interview process so that you could then offer them something that can help them with that pain point if your given product does that. Now, it's really, if you look at it, it's really a different form of a sales process. And I think the minute people start thinking of podcasts as a different form of a sales process and that the person you're interviewing is the potential sale, they just don't know it yet. And look, if there's no sale there, as you interview them, you could probably design your interview questions so that you can A, feature them so that they become the star of the show, B, learn about who they are and what they're all about, how they get to where they got to, and C, what are their pain points? What are the things they're struggling with that you might be able to help them with? And it might not be that like your business is even the solution. It might be that someone, if you do it from a place of service where how can I do to help this person, knowing that I'm going to target the specific person that I know my product usually helps, knowing that once we get off the show, there might be an opportunity for me to add value to this person, either A, through my offerings, or B, through my network, or C, through the network of my network. Notice the last two, there might be nothing in it for me other than just paying it forward. But the fact that I look at it from the perspective of I want to add value to this person's life, I want to help them get what they want, and there's a high likelihood that what I offer is going to help them get what they want, then it creates an opportunity that 20, 30, 40, 50% of the people I interview, what I offer as an outcome of the show might actually make their lives better, might make their business better. And so I love podcasts as a B2B tool. And I treat it like a sales funnel if I have it for my business. And I notice when I talk to entrepreneurs about this, they're kind of like flip it on their head. They're like, I've never heard this before. I always think of podcasts as something different. I always think of building a podcast as either A, I want to be like Darius and build a big following, or B, I want to, build a big audience that might buy my products or like support my business. And I'm like, neither of those. I did the first one and I'm happy I did it. And I'll continue to do it. I think most people should not do that. It's probably not a great use of their investment of money or time, unless you're a crazy person like me. And B, I think I actually would never do that. I think it's too much work and the upside is too small. I think that the third version, which is where I treat my guests like the network I want to build, and I start building my network through the podcast. And that's the only reason I do it. And the network becomes either A, people that I can leverage to build my business in some way that's maybe not directly them being a client, or B, that they are a potential client of mine. Then I think you literally start to see a much higher hit ratio. And it's really simple. You're not selling them anything. You're learning what they're all about. You're letting them tell their story. You put them on a pedestal. You make them feel special because they have a great story, and you see where like, what are the things they're struggling with, and then after the show's over, you look for opportunities to create value that may or may not involve what you have to offer. There's just a high propensity, given what their problems are, that you may have some solutions for them. And there's some ways of going about doing that I'm happy to, if anyone's interested in any of this stuff, take it offline with you and, talk you through, how I would do it if I was you, and give you some thoughts. You can email me. It's simple, Darius@therealdarius.com. That's the best place to, hit me up to talk about it. But what I'll tell you is, it's funny when I talk to, I have a couple, like I said, probably 3 or 4 of my entrepreneur friends who were helping them with their shows for the specific reasons I'm outlining. They want to build a network. They want to do it for lead gen. They want to build their client base from it. I would say that, they'll start going down the pathway of, can we, cut up this content for, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. Like, don't expect us to be doing that. I'm just like running your show for you. And the reason for it is they start to do what everyone does. They start to get really hung up on, am I building an audience? And I'm like, screw your audience. If you want to go build an audience, like you're going to spend a lot of money to do that if you want to do it the right way. Or you got to have a piece of content like a newsletter or some lead magnet, or, there's plenty of ways of doing it that I'm not super fluent in, but I know of. That's not a reason to do this. I think that's a direct hit. Hey, how do I go build that specific relationship? Who do I want to build that specific relationship with? If you looked at my list, I have 300 or 400 people that I'm like, I want to build a relationship with those 300 or 400 people. Very specific. And as the show gets bigger, it opens up more doors to those folks considering this an option for them. And eventually I'll talk to probably all of them, right? And there will be another 300 or 400 after that. Because for me, my belief is that the podcast is the number one way to build the relationships you want to build in your life. And if the minute you think of the podcast as a platform to do that, you are one step ahead of everybody else. And I talk to my friends who are entrepreneurs who about their podcast, and I'm like, look, I just have a different perspective than you do. I think the perspective is not around building an audience. I don't think it's around treating it like a funnel. I don't think it's around selling products to your audience. I think those are all nice to haves if you can do it. And maybe I'm just a dummy that doesn't know how to put it together, but that's what I believe. And if you go the other direction, which is like, I don't care about any of that, and they go, I want to build an audience, I'm like, I don't care if you're doing it for the reason I'm saying, which again, the Greatness Machine is not an example, but some of these other podcasts that we've either launched or helped launch for friends I tell them, I don't care if I get one view out of it. I just want to know who's on the other side of the interview. And are you building a relationship with that person? And I think that if you start to think of podcasts as a medium in that way, you flip it on its head, and you go out there and you meet the people you want to meet. And there was a quote that I love that we'll end the show on, which is a podcast. It was back in 2021, I think I heard this, but a podcast in 2025, let's call it now since we're here. Back then it was in 2021. A podcast in 2021 is the same as a cup of coffee in 2019. And I'll move that forward today. A podcast in 2025 is the same as a cup of coffee or a lunch back in the aughts or back in the 2010s. And the minute you treat it as such, you're one step ahead, and you're you're creating an opportunity to meet the people you want to meet, to build the relationships you want to build, to create the outcomes you want to create. And if you're doing that, you're one step ahead of the competition. So until next time, peace out. We love you. She's my lover. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on, so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one. She's my lover.